The blade meets flesh. The night was silent. The air was cold. Only the sound of metal boots echoed on the broken stone floor. She walked carefully, her weapon in hand, her eyes searching for him. Somewhere in the ruins, the human was hiding. She thought he was weak. She thought he was finished. But she had learned long ago, never trust silence. Her name was Syria. She belonged to the Kral, a warrior race feared across many stars. They believed in strength, in perfect armor, in blades that cut through steel. And tonight Syria carried one such blade glowing with sharp blue light. She had chased humans many times before. They always screamed when her blade touched them. Always. But this one was different. She found him leaning against a broken wall, his leg bleeding, his clothes torn. He should have been on the ground. He should have been begging for his life, but instead he stood tall, watching her approach with calm eyes. His breathing was heavy, but his face carried something strange, something she could not name. She tightened her grip on the blade. "You are finished," she said in a cold voice. "You cannot fight me. You cannot even stand." The man did not answer. He only looked at her, almost as if he was waiting. Syria stepped forward and swung her blade with deadly force. The weapon hummed as it cut through the air. The target was his wounded leg. One strike would end the fight. One strike would bring him to the ground. The blade hit, but the sound that followed was not what she expected. It was not a scream. It was not a cry of pain. It was the sharp crack of breaking metal. Her blade shattered into 1,000 pieces. Falling to the floor like shards of glass, her eyes widened. She froze. This had never happened before. Her blade was forged to cut through walls, through armor, through bone, but it broke. It broke on his leg, and then he smiled. A slow, steady smile spread across his face. Blood still dripped down his leg, but his eyes burned with fire. "Is that all?" he asked, his voice low but filled with power. Syria felt her heart pound. For the first time in many battles, fear touched her chest. This was not normal. This was not possible. Humans were supposed to be weak, fragile, soft. That was the story her people always told. They bled easily. They broke easily. They died quickly. But here was one who did not follow the story. Here was one who looked at death and smiled. She stepped back without meaning to, her boots scraping on the stone. She raised her hand, ready, to summon another weapon. But her mind was not steady anymore. Her thoughts were broken. Her eyes could not leave his smile. The man pushed himself off the wall and took one step forward. Even with his wounded leg, he stood as if nothing could bring him down. His shadow stretched long in the dim light. He looked less like prey and more like a predator. "You thought I would scream," he said. "But you don't understand. Pain doesn't stop us. It makes us stronger." His words hit her harder than any weapon. She felt her throat tighten. This was not strength of the body. This was something deeper, something dangerous, something her people never understood. She tried to laugh, to push away the fear. "You bleed, human. You will fall soon. Your body will give up." But even as she said it, she knew she was lying to herself. His blood was real, yes, but his spirit was untouchable. The silence of the ruins grew heavy. The broken pieces of her blade glittered on the ground, shining like stars. Her hand trembled slightly, and she hated that it did. She was Krail, born for war, raised to be fearless. But in front of him, her training felt thin. The man took another step, his eyes never leaving hers. His leg dragged slightly, but his smile never broke. "Do you know why you will lose?" he asked softly. She could not answer. She could only stare. "Because you believe strength is only muscle and metal," he said. "But for us, strength is something else. Something you cannot break." For the first time in her life, Syria did not know what to do. The fight was supposed to be over. The human was supposed to fall. Yet here she was, the one frozen, the one afraid. and as his shadow fell across her, she realized a truth she wished she had never seen. Humans were not weak. They were terrifying. The smile that shouldn't exist. The ruins whispered with silence. Dust floated in the cold night air, caught in beams of dying light. Broken steel and shattered stone stood like the bones of an ancient world. And in the middle of it all, he stood, bleeding, smiling, unbroken. Saria's chest tightened. The sound of his smile was louder than the silence. It was not the smile of victory. It was not the smile of arrogance. No, it was worse. It was the smile of someone who had already accepted pain, someone who had swallowed it whole and found strength inside it. She hated that smile. "Why do you grin like that?" she demanded, her voice sharp, hiding the edge of fear. Her people did not retreat. Her people did not bend. And yet her hand twitched, betraying the storm inside her. The man tilted his head slightly, his eyes glinting in the broken light. "Because you don't understand me," he said, "and that gives me strength." Saria's stomach nodded. She had fought humans before. They screamed when their bones cracked. They cried when their blood spilled. But this one, he treated pain like an old friend. Her mind raced. Maybe he was altered. Maybe he was not a normal human. But no. She had scanned him before. His body was weak by Krail standards. His muscles were nothing compared to hers. His blood carried no strange energy. He was ordinary, and yet he was terrifying. Saria tightened her grip on the hilt of her second blade. The first one lay broken at his feet, shattered by a strike that should have ended him. This time she would aim higher, his chest, his throat. She would cut the smile from his face. She lunged. The second blade hissed through the air, glowing bright, but before it struck, his hand shot out, bare, bleeding, trembling, and caught her wrist. The impact shook her arm. She expected him to fail, to fall, to collapse under her strength. But he held on. His grip was like iron. His eyes burned like fire. She tried to pull away. His fingers only tightened. "You want me to scream?" he said softly. His voice was steady, almost calm. "Then listen carefully. My scream is not fear. My scream is war." And then he pulled her closer. Saria's heart pounded in her chest. She could feel his breath heavy and ragged, yet steady with unbroken will. She pushed against him with all her power, muscles straining. Her kind were built for battle. Their bones were harder than steel. Their veins carried fire. Yet this human, this fragile creature, stood against her as if his soul weighed more than her body. The blade trembled in her hand. The light flickered. She could not push further. He leaned closer, his smile still sharp, and whispered, "This is why we do not fall. Pain is not an end. It is a beginning." She tore her arm free, stumbling backward. Her boots slipped on the stone, and for the first time in years, Saria lost balance. She caught herself quickly, but the shame burned hot. No warrior of the Krail should ever stumble. Her soldiers were watching. She could feel their eyes on her. They had followed her into this fight, believing in her power, in her certainty of victory. Now they watched her face a single human and hesitate. Saria's chest rose and fell. Her pride screamed at her to finish him. But another voice, quieter and darker, whispered inside her, "What if you cannot?" She forced her thoughts away. This was nothing. He was nothing. Just a bleeding man standing in ruins. She would prove it. She would show them all. With a growl, she rushed forward again, swinging her blade in a wide arc. The air split with heat and sound. Sparks lit the night. But this time, he did not move back. He stepped into the strike. The blade carved across, his shoulder slicing deep. Blood sprayed dark against the pale light. But instead of falling, he laughed. It was not madness. It was not joy. It was defiance. The sound chilled her bones. Her steps faltered. Her soldiers shifted nervously in the shadows. None of them had ever heard a human laugh like that. Saria's throat felt dry. She wanted to shout at him, to silence him, to erase that sound. But she could not. because she finally understood. This was why humans were feared in whispers across galaxies. Not because of their weapons, not because of their numbers, but because of this. Because even when their bodies broke, even when blood poured from their skin, they did not stop. They smiled, they laughed, and they kept coming. The man stood tall, his shirt torn, his wounds fresh. His blood stained the ground, but his voice rang strong. "You can cut me 1,000 times," he said, eyes locked on hers. "But every cut only makes me remember who I am." Seria's hands trembled. The blade felt heavy now. Too heavy. She looked at him and saw not a human, but something greater, something impossible. For the first time in her warrior life, Seria felt the cold hand of doubt close around her heart. And as he took another step toward her, bleeding yet unbroken, she whispered to herself words she never thought she would speak. This one cannot be killed." The alien shock. The silence after his words was heavier than any blade. Seria stood frozen, her chest rising and falling, her grip on the glowing weapon slippery with sweat. Around her, the broken ruins seemed to lean closer, like the stones themselves, wanted to witness this impossible moment. She had fought hundreds of battles. She had broken warriors stronger than him, creatures taller, faster, more armored. She had seen blood, screams, and death. But never had she seen this. A human who laughed through pain, a human who smiled at the edge of death. Her mind screamed against it. It cannot be true. It cannot. The Krail had told her since childhood, humans were fragile. Their bones cracked under pressure, their minds shattered when tortured. Their bodies gave up long before the war ended. To the Krail, humans were prey. Dangerous prey, yes, clever prey, but prey all the same. But this man, this bleeding, staggering man, was rewriting every lesson. Seria felt something burn in her chest. It wasn't rage. Rage, she understood. This was different. This was fear. Her soldiers whispered behind her. They shifted uneasily, their armored steps clattering on the stone. Warriors of the Krail did not fear, yet even they had seen the impossible. Even they could not hide the tremor in their stance. One of them muttered, "He should be dead." Another hissed back, "Then why is he smiling?" The whispers spread like a sickness. Seria's jaw tightened. If she faltered now, she would lose them. She would lose control. She raised her blade again, forcing her voice to stay cold. "He bleeds. He will die. Nothing changes that." But her own words rang hollow in her ears, because when she looked at him, she saw no weakness. Yes, his shoulder dripped blood. Yes, his leg dragged with each step. But his eyes, those eyes, glowed with something no wound could kill. He was not fighting with muscle. He was fighting with something else, something deeper. He spoke again, voice rough but steady. "Do you know why you can't win? You fight to prove strength. I fight because I have no choice. That makes me unstoppable." Seria's stomach turned, that word unstoppable. She had heard it before, in the old war records. Stories of human soldiers who fought for days without food, who crawled through fire when their bodies had already failed, who kept moving until the last breath escaped their lungs. But those were stories, myths, tales told by defeated enemies trying to explain their shame. The Krail always laughed at them. Yet now, looking at this one man, Seria realized the stories had never been lies. They had been warnings, warnings her people had ignored. The shock hit her like a strike to the chest. This was the human secret. Not their weapons, not their ships, not their technology. It was their will, their refusal to break, their madness, disguised as courage. Seria's throat felt dry. For the first time in her warrior life, she saw the future, and it was not Krail standing victorious. It was humans rising from the ashes again and again, smiling through broken bones, laughing in the face of death. Her hand trembled. She lowered the blade slightly without meaning to. The human noticed. His bloody lips curved into that same terrible smile. "Now you see it," he said softly. "Don't you?" Syria's heart hammered. She hated that he was right. She hated that he could see into her fear. Her soldiers shifted again, their armor scraping. One of them growled, "Commander, order us. We will finish him." She wanted to say yes. She wanted to shout the command, but deep down she knew what would happen. They would rush him. They would cut him. They would bring him down with overwhelming force. But he would not scream. He would not beg. He would keep smiling until the very last breath. And when he fell, his death would not be a victory. It would be a warning that more like him would come. Syria's blood turned cold. For the first time, she understood the true terror of humanity. Not their strength, not their numbers, but the fact that they turned death into fuel, pain into fire, loss into rage, and no enemy could prepare for that. Her hand slipped from the blade. She caught it quickly, but he saw. Of course he saw. He tilted his head, eyes burning. "You thought I was weak," he said. "But weakness is a weapon. It makes us fight harder. You can't break something that refuses to stay broken." The words were simple, but they cut deeper than any blade. Syria felt her soldiers' eyes on her. They waited. They wanted to believe she was still in control. But she knew the truth. She was no longer the hunter. She was standing in front of something her kind had never understood, something they had mocked for centuries. Human will. Her hands shook. Her chest was tight. She hated it. She hated him. But she could not stop the thought that filled her mind, drowning everything else. If one human could do this, what would an army of them be like? The image was enough to send a shiver crawling down her spine. The battlefield seemed to close in around her. The shattered blade at her feet glimmered faintly. As if mocking her, the silence stretched longer, thicker, until even her breath felt too loud. And in that silence, Syria whispered words she had never imagined would leave her lips. "This is not a human. This is a monster." The man's smile widened. His blood dripped onto the ground. His body swayed from the pain. But his spirit stood taller than the ruins around them. And Syria knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the core, the galaxy had underestimated humanity. And now, they would all pay the price. The human secret. The battlefield was a graveyard of silence. Dust hung in the air like ghostly mist. The shattered ruins around them groaned in the cold night wind, broken steel beams creaking as if the planet itself listened to the impossible duel. Syria stood frozen. Her blade still glowed faintly in her hand, but her grip was weak. The human's smile haunted her. His blood painted the ground, his wounds deep and raw, yet he stood tall. Not just tall, unshakable, like a shadow carved into stone. Her soldiers looked to her for command. Their breaths echoed inside their helmets, ragged and nervous. Warriors of the Krail were never nervous, yet here, against one man, they were. The human broke the silence first. His voice was steady, even though his lungs dragged in rough breaths. "You keep asking yourself," he said, "why I'm still standing, why I'm smiling, why I don't fall. Do you want the answer?" Syria's throat tightened. She didn't want to ask. She didn't want to give him the satisfaction. But her silence betrayed her. He could see the question in her eyes. The man took a slow step forward, his wounded leg dragging. Every movement should have been agony, yet he walked as if the pain was nothing but a chain he refused to wear. "The truth is simple," he said. "Humans are not the strongest. We're not the fastest. We're not the smartest. By your standards, we should have gone extinct long ago." His words cut deeper than blades. They sounded like a confession, but the power was not in the weakness. It was in what came after. He lifted his blood-stained hand, pointing toward her, toward all of them. His eyes burned. But we have one thing no other species has. Something that makes us dangerous beyond reason. Something you will never understand. Saria's breath caught. She wanted to tell him to stop. She wanted to silence him with her blade, but her arm refused to move. She was caught, trapped by the storm in his words. "What is it?" she whispered, before she realized she had spoken. The man's smile widened. "Pain," he said. "Pain is our teacher." The word hung in the air like thunder. He continued, his voice growing stronger, as though each sentence stitched his body back together. "Every child on our world learns it. We fall, we bleed, we cry, and we rise again. We are not born into safety, we are born into struggle. We break bones climbing. We scar our hands building. We lose. We suffer. And we learn to keep going." Saria's stomach nodded. His words stirred images she didn't want. Human children rising after injury. Human soldiers crawling across battlefields with shattered legs. Human faces smiling through tears. He stepped closer, his shadow stretching long under the broken moonlight. "Your people," he said, nodding toward her soldiers, "fear pain. You build armor to hide from it. You design weapons to kill before you feel it. You spend your lives running from it, but us?" He bared his teeth in that haunting smile. "We wear pain like armor." The soldiers shifted uneasily. Even through their helmets, Saria could feel their doubt. She hated it. She hated him. But her chest burned with something worse than hate. It was realization. He wasn't lying. The Krail believed strength was the absence of weakness. But this human was showing her the opposite. Strength was carrying weakness and refusing to bow to it. Saria tried to snarl, to drown her fear in rage. "Pain will still kill you. It makes you weak. It makes you slow." The man chuckled, shaking his head. His shoulder bled freely, yet his voice carried iron. "No. Pain reminds us we're alive. And do you know what life means to us?" His eyes locked with hers. "It means fighting until the last breath. It means giving everything, even when there's nothing left. That's why we survive. That's why we win." Her soldiers muttered again, but now it wasn't whispers of victory. It was unease, doubt, even fear. Saria gritted her teeth. She could not let them see her falter. She raised her blade again, forcing strength into her trembling hand. "You are one man, bleeding, broken, and yet you dare speak as if you are invincible." The man tilted his head. His bloody grin deepened. "I am one man," he said. "But behind me stand billions, and every single one of them carries this same fire. That's the secret you should fear. Not me, not my wounds, but the truth that there are countless more like me. Humans who will rise, again and again, no matter how many times you cut them down." The words hit her chest like a hammer. Billions, Saria, had seen human armies before, but she had never thought of them this way, not as numbers, not as soldiers, but as endless flames, each one burning with the same unstoppable will. Her blade shook. She tightened her grip until her knuckles burned, but she could not stop the tremor. The human's voice dropped lower now, softer, deadlier. "Do you know why your blade broke? It wasn't my flesh. It was your belief. You thought we were weak. You thought we would fall easily. That lie shattered when it met the truth." Saria's chest rose and fell rapidly. Her mouth was dry. Around her, her soldiers stood stiff, silent, no longer fearless. The human stood bleeding, swaying but unbroken. His shadow towered over the ruins, over her, over everything. And then he spoke words that would echo in her mind forever. "You can kill a human, but you cannot defeat humanity." The silence that followed was louder than war. Saria's heart pounded against her ribs. She saw the truth now. In his eyes, in his voice, in the way he stood despite his wounds. This was the human secret. Their real weapon, not ships, not guns, not machines. It was their refusal to die quietly. Saria clenched her teeth so hard it hurt. She wanted to scream, to strike, to end him. But even as the thought raced through her, another truth rose, bitter and cold. Even if she killed him, His words would live. His smile would remain. His fire would spread. And for the first time in her life, Commander Saria of the Kryl wondered if her people were doomed. Her fear, his power. The ruins groaned in the wind, a hollow song of broken steel and crushed stone. The battlefield, once loud with the clash of weapons, was silent now. Silent except for the sound of his breathing, rough, strained, but steady. Saria tightened her grip on the glowing blade. She told herself it was steady. She told herself her hand did not shake. But she knew the truth. The tremor in her arm was not weakness of muscle. It was fear. The man bled before her, his shoulder torn, his leg dragging, his skin pale from blood loss. By every rule of battle, by every lesson her people had taught her, he should already be dead. Yet he stood tall, and worse, he smiled, that smile carved through her mind like fire. She could not erase it. Her soldiers waited. Their armor glimmered faintly under the fractured moonlight. They looked at her for command. They always had. But tonight, for the first time, she felt their doubt. She felt it pressing against her, back like a weight. If she faltered now, if she showed fear, she would lose them. She would lose everything. She raised the blade higher, forcing her voice to steady. You will fall, human. No one stands forever. The man tilted his head, his bloody grin cutting through the shadows. Maybe not forever, but longer than you expect. Saria's teeth ground together. His words were simple, but they struck like blades. She lunged forward, blades slicing through the air, glowing with deadly light. The strike was perfect, fast, precise, deadly. But he moved. Not quickly, not with speed her kind would admire, but with something else. Something worse. He stepped into the strike, the blade carved across his side. Blood spilled hot and thick. Any other creature would have fallen screaming. But he didn't stop. He grabbed her arm with his bare hand, his blood soaking her armor, his grip like iron chains. Saria gasped, her eyes wide. He should be collapsing. He should be broken. But he was pulling her closer, closer into the fire of his gaze. You're afraid, he whispered. The word slammed into her chest harder than any strike. Her instinct screamed to deny it, to laugh, to spit in his face. But her body betrayed her. The tremor in her hand, the sweat in her grip, the racing of her heart. No, she snarled, yanking her arm free, stumbling backward. I am Krail, we do not fear. The man chuckled, dark and low. He staggered, blood dripping, but his voice carried power. You fear because you see the truth. Your strength is muscle. Your courage is armor. Strip them away, and what are you? Nothing. But me? He spread his arms, bloody and shaking. You've stripped me already, and I'm still here. Her chest tightened. She wanted to shout, to order her soldiers to rush him, to bury him under steel and fire, but some part of her knew they would fail. Not because he was faster, not because he was stronger, but because he would not stop, and that would break them more than death. Her hand trembled again. She tightened her grip, forcing her knuckles white. The man's smile grew sharper. You thought I would scream, but now it is you who wants to scream, isn't it? Her throat burned. She hated him. She hated his words, his fire, his defiance, but most of all, she hated the truth in them. Her soldiers shifted nervously, their confidence fading with every heartbeat. She heard one whisper, "Why doesn't he fall?" Another muttered, "He bleeds more than we've ever seen. But he still fights." The whispers were poison. They spread fast, sinking into her ranks. Saria's jaw clenched. She had to end this. She had to crush him before doubt destroyed them all. With a roar, she charged again, swinging her blade with all the force of her warrior blood. The air cracked, sparks flew, stone split beneath the power of her strike. The blade slammed into him. He did not block. He did not dodge. He let it cut. Flesh tore, blood sprayed, but his eyes never closed. His body bent, but did not fall. And then, he laughed. The sound froze her blood. It was not madness. It was not mockery. It was war itself given voice. Her soldiers stepped back. Their armor clattered. Some lowered their weapons. The sound of his laughter broke them more than any strike. Seria's stomach turned to ice. She tried to lift her blade again, but her arm felt heavy. So heavy. The man leaned closer, his voice low, deadly calm. Do you understand now? You came here thinking strength was yours, but strength is not muscles. Strength is not blades. Strength is not fear. Strength is standing when the universe says fall. That is power. That is why you cannot win. Seria's lips trembled. Her heart hammered so loud it filled her ears. She wanted to deny him. She wanted to scream that he was wrong. But the words would not come. Because she knew he was right. The fear she had tried to bury now rose like a storm. She was not fighting his body anymore, she was fighting his will. And that could not be cut. Her blade slipped from her grip. It hit the stone with a sharp crack, the sound echoing like thunder. The soldiers gasped. Some stepped back. Some dropped their weapons. Seria stared at him wide-eyed, breathing hard. She had never dropped her weapon. Not once. Not in training. Not in war. But tonight, her hand betrayed her. The human took another step, blood dripping, his body trembling, but unbowed. His smile was sharp as steel, and Seria realized the truth. It was not his wounds that mattered, it was hers. Her wound was invisible, but it was deeper than any cut. It was fear, and fear was already killing her. The man whispered one final sentence, his voice soft but carrying across the battlefield. You have already lost. The turning point. The ruins stood in silence, jagged shadows cutting across the broken ground. The air was thick with the iron scent of blood. Seria's blade lay on the stone, its glow fading. Her hand trembled, empty and weak. Her chest heaved as she stared at him, the human who would not fall. He should have been broken. His body was torn, his wounds deep. Blood poured from his shoulder and side, painting his clothes dark. His leg dragged as he moved, each step heavy. And yet, he stood taller than her, taller than all of them. The man's eyes burned like fire in the ruins. His voice cut through the silence. You thought pain would break me, but pain is only the beginning. The words rang out, sharp as steel. Her soldiers shifted uneasily. Their armor clattered as they moved back a step. They were warriors of the Grail, born and bred for war, trained to never fear. Yet tonight even they felt the weight of his presence. One soldier whispered, "This is not possible." Another muttered, "He should be on the ground." The whispers spread like cracks, in glass. Fear bled through the ranks. Seria clenched her teeth. She wanted to shout at them, to bring order back with her voice. But the truth was already inside her chest, heavy, unshakable. She could feel it. She was afraid. The human stepped forward again. His body swayed, but his eyes never broke. His shadow stretched long over the broken stones. You see it now, he said softly. Don't you? You believed strength was yours. But strength has always been ours. Not because we are unhurt, but because we keep moving when we are hurt. His words struck harder than weapons. Seria's soldiers gripped their blades tighter, but their hands shook. She saw it. She hated it. She hated him. With a sudden roar, she forced her voice across the field. He bleeds. He is dying. He cannot fight all of us. Do not fear him. Her soldiers straightened. For a moment, silence held. For a moment, she thought her voice had cut through their doubt. And then, he laughed. It was low at first, broken, by blood in his throat, but it grew louder, deeper, until it filled the ruins. The sound echoed off the shattered stone, bouncing into the ears of every soldier. The Krail had heard war cries before. They had heard screams and roars and threats. But this laugh, this terrible, fearless laugh, was something else. It was the Sound of a man who should be dead but refused. It was the sound of victory born inside defeat. Her soldiers stepped back. One dropped his blade. Another turned his head away, as if he could not bear to watch. Saria's chest burned with shame. Her army was breaking, not because of wounds, not because of weapons, but because of one human's will. The man's laughter stopped. His voice dropped lower, sharp as a knife. You came here to conquer, to crush us, but you forgot the truth. He raised his hand, dripping with blood, pointing at Saria. You can kill a human, but you cannot kill what we stand for. You cannot kill the will to fight. That is why you will lose. The words struck her harder than his grip had earlier. Her knees almost buckled. Saria's mind raced. She could not show weakness. She had to finish him. Her pride demanded it. Her soldiers demanded it. She reached for her blade. Her fingers brushed the hilt, and then she froze. The human stepped closer, bleeding with every movement, but his eyes never leaving hers. Pick it up, he said. Try again. See if you can kill me this time. Her hand trembled. Her pride screamed at her to grab the weapon, but her heart pounded with fear. Deep inside she knew the truth. If she struck again, it would not matter. He would keep standing. He would keep smiling. She pulled her hand back. Her soldiers saw it. They saw their commander hesitate, and in that moment, the last thread of their courage snapped. One soldier whispered, "He cannot be stopped." Another dropped his weapon and stepped back. The others followed, their formation breaking, fear spreading like fire. Saria's eyes widened. She felt it slipping. The army, the battle, the war itself. She had lost control. The human's smile widened. This is the turning point, he said. Saria's throat tightened. She wanted to deny it. She wanted to scream that he was wrong. But her army was already crumbling. They looked at him not as prey, not as a dying man, but as something greater, something eternal. The human stood in the ruins, blood dripping, body broken, yet unbroken in spirit. His voice rang out once more, louder than ever. You wanted me to fall, but tonight it is you who will fall. Not by my blade, not by my hand, but by your own fear. The words echoed. The silence after was unbearable. Saria's soldiers broke. Some ran into the shadows. Some dropped to their knees. Others stood frozen, unable to fight, unable to move. Her heart pounded. Her breath came fast. She had never known fear like this. She had never seen warriors of the Krail collapse without a strike. The battlefield was lost, and she knew, with bitter clarity, that this night would be remembered. Not as her victory, but as the moment the Krail saw the true weapon of humanity. Not strength, not speed, not fire, but will. The human staggered forward, his wounds pouring, yet his shadow stretching over all of them. He raised his hand one last time, pointing at Saria. You asked for war, he said. His voice was rough, but it carried like thunder. Now you will learn what war truly is. And in that moment, Saria realized something she had never thought possible. The war was already over, and they had lost. The ending truth. The battlefield lay in ruins. The broken walls stood like bones of a dead world, jagged shadows stretching under the pale moonlight. The dust hung heavy in the air, glowing faintly in the cracks of fading fire. And in the middle of the silence stood the man, bleeding, broken yet unbroken. Saria could not move. Her blade was gone, her soldiers scattered. Around her the mighty Krail warriors whispered, their voices small, stripped of the thunder that once shook galaxies. Some dropped their weapons. Some stared in disbelief. Some simply turned and ran. She wanted to call them back, to remind them of who they were, but no words came, because she knew what they had seen, what she had seen. A single human had stood against them, wounded beyond reason, and refused to fall. That truth alone shattered them. The man swayed on his feet, blood dripping down his arm, soaking into the dirt. His body looked ready to collapse, but his eyes still burned like a living fire. And when he smiled again, that terrible, unshakable smile, Saria's heart clenched. It was over, not because he had killed them, but because he hadn't needed to. He had broken their spirit. "You understand now," the man said softly. His voice was rough, torn by blood in his throat, but it carried. It always carried. "This is why humanity survives. Not because we are stronger. Not because we are faster, but because we never stop." Saria's throat burned. She wanted to argue. She wanted to say it was lies. But the proof stood in front of her, dripping blood, swaying yet undefeated. "You think pain is an end?" he continued. "For us, it is a reminder. You think death is defeat? For us, it is a promise that others will rise in our place. You think fear makes us weak, but fear only sharpens our will." The word stabbed deeper than her blade ever had. He stepped closer. His leg dragged, his side gushed, but his presence grew larger with every movement. His shadow fell across her, stretching long in the ruins. "You came here to break us," he said, "but tonight you learned the truth. You cannot break what refuses to stay broken." Saria's lips trembled. She wanted to scream, to lift her blade, to strike, but she could not. She had already lost. Her soldiers knew it. She knew it. The human stopped only a step away. His eyes locked on hers. His voice dropped soft but sharp as a knife. "You wanted me to scream," he said, "but the only scream tonight is yours. The silent scream of realizing you never understood your enemy." The air between them felt heavy, electric, alive with something greater than battle. Saria's knees almost buckled. She forced herself to stand, but her chest burned with shame. She had never been defeated. Never once in her life. But tonight, defeat wrapped around her like chains. The human looked at her not with hatred, not with mockery, but with something worse. Pity. He turned slightly, his voice rising to reach every ear in the ruins. "Listen well," he said. "This is not the end of me. This is the beginning of you. Because now you know. Now you understand. Humanity is not flesh. Humanity is not blood. Humanity is will. And will cannot be conquered." The words echoed across the battlefield. The broken stones seemed to carry them into the sky itself. Saria's soldiers lowered their weapons. Some dropped to their knees. Others simply walked away, shadows in the night, their pride gone. Her throat tightened. Her pride screamed at her, to strike him down while he was weak, to bury her shame in his death. But her heart knew the truth. Even if she killed him now, it would not matter, because legends do not die with flesh. They live in memory, and tonight he had already become a legend. The human turned back to her, his voice softer now. "Go," he said. "Tell them what you saw. Tell them why you will never win. Tell them why the galaxy will never conquer us." Saria's lips parted, but no sound came. She wanted to deny him. She wanted to call him a liar. But all she could do was stare into those burning eyes. Her chest rose and fell. Her hands trembled. And finally, with a slow, painful breath, she lowered her head. Not in respect, not in surrender, but in acceptance. She had seen the truth. The man swayed again, blood dripping from his wounds. He looked as if he would collapse at any moment, but he did not. He stood tall to the end. And as Saria turned to retreat, her soldiers following in silence, his final words cut through the ruins, carving themselves into her soul. "You can kill me, but you cannot kill humanity." The battlefield fell silent. The night wind carried the words away, but they did not fade. They burned inside every witness, carved into their memory forever. Saria walked into the shadows, her heart heavy. She knew she would never forget this night. Not the man, not the smile, not the truth. The Krail had believed humanity was weak, fragile, easy to break. But tonight they had seen the ending truth. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was unstoppable.